My name's Jake, and I live in a small suburban town just outside of Denver, Colorado. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other's business and life feels cozy, even if it's a little mundane. I work in logistics, managing shipments for a mid-sized company. It's a steady job that keeps the bills paid and food on the table. My wife Linda and I have been married for 15 years, and we have two beautiful daughters, Sarah, who's 13, and Lizzie, who's 11. Linda used to work at a nursery but decided to become a stay-at-home mom after we had Sarah. Life was predictable, stable, and for the most part, happy. We live in a modest two-story house with a white picket fence and a backyard big enough for the kids to play in. Weekends were spent at Sarah's soccer games or Lizzie's ballet recitals, followed by family dinners where we'd catch up on the week's events. Linda was always the life of the party, her laugh infectious, her smile bright. She was the glue that held our little family together, or so I thought. Everything seemed perfect on the outside, but as I would soon discover, our seemingly idyllic life was about to be shattered in the most unexpected way. It all started with a simple text message on our living room's smart TV, a message that would unravel a web of lies and betrayals I never saw coming. It was a Tuesday evening, and we were celebrating Mike's birthday over a video call. Mike and his wife had moved abroad a few years ago, but we kept in touch regularly. Linda had set up the call on the TV using Chromecast, so we could all see them clearly and chat comfortably. We laughed, reminisced about old times, and caught up on life. It was a typical, pleasant evening until Linda started feeling unwell. She said she felt dizzy and dozed off on the sofa, leaving the rest of us to continue the call. Eventually, the connection dropped, and I was about to redial when Linda's phone lit up with a new message from someone saved as Heartthrob, with a heart emoji next to the name. Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on it. The message read, "Miss you tons, babe." That line alone felt like a punch to the gut. The sender was a guy named Chris, an old school friend of Linda's who had always been around, always too close for comfort. As I read through the messages, the pit in my stomach grew. They were intimate, filled with flirtation and inside jokes that only lovers share. There were even pictures, some of Linda, more of him, none of which I wanted to see. I sat there, stunned, staring at the screen. The house was silent except for Linda's soft snores. My mind raced, trying to process what I had just discovered. Linda had been cheating on me. The woman I had built my life with, the mother of my children, had betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. The next morning the air was thick with tension. Linda tried to act normal, but I could barely look at her. Over the next few days, I started noticing little things that had seemed insignificant before. She was often on her phone, smiling at messages and quickly hiding the screen when I walked by. She would dress up more than usual, even for simple errands. Our sex life, which had been dwindling for months, was now non-existent. I couldn't get the image of those messages out of my head. The more I thought about it, the more pieces started to fit together. The late nights out with friends, the frequent trips to buy groceries or run errands, and the way she had been so distant and irritable lately. It all pointed to one painful truth. Linda was having an affair. I started paying more attention, looking for any clues that could confirm my suspicions. One evening I noticed her packing a small overnight bag. She said she was going to stay at her friend Amy's house for a girls' night. I didn't believe her. I checked her phone when she was in the shower and saw a message from Chris. "Can't wait to see you tonight." The anger and betrayal I felt were overwhelming. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but I knew I needed more proof. If I confronted her without solid evidence, she would just deny it and turn the blame on me. So I waited and watched, biding my time, hoping to catch her in a lie she couldn't talk her way out of. Days turned into weeks, and my suspicions grew stronger. Linda continued to lie, to deceive, and I continued to gather evidence, each piece of the puzzle fitting together to reveal the heartbreaking reality of her betrayal. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Linda had told me she was going out to meet Amy again for another girls' night. This time I decided to follow her. She left the house in a hurry, not bothering to say goodbye, which only fueled my suspicions. I waited a few minutes before grabbing my keys and heading out the door. I tailed her car at a distance, trying to keep my anger in check. She drove across town to a small, nondescript motel on the outskirts. My heart pounded as I watched her park and walk up to one of the rooms. A few moments later, the door opened, and Chris stepped out to greet her. They kissed passionately before disappearing inside. I sat in my car, fists clenched, trying to decide what to do next. The rage inside me was boiling over, but I knew I needed to handle this carefully. I took out my phone and started recording, capturing the motel's name and room number. Then I stepped out of the car, my mind made up. As I approached the door, I could hear their voices, muffled by the thin walls. My blood boiled as I listened to their laughter and the unmistakable sounds of their intimacy. I didn't bother knocking. Instead, I kicked the door open with all the force I could muster. The door slammed against the wall, and I stormed into the room. Linda and Chris were in bed, tangled in each other, their expressions turning from surprise to sheer panic as they saw me. Linda screamed, trying to cover herself with the sheets, while Chris scrambled to get out of bed. "You fucking bastards!" I yelled, holding up my phone to film them. "Say hello to the camera!" Chris tried to approach me, hands raised in a placating gesture. "Jake, man, let's talk about this," he stammered. But I was beyond talking. Without thinking, I swung my fist at him, landing a solid punch to his head. He stumbled back, clutching his face, blood pouring from his nose. Linda screamed louder, pleading with me to stop, but I couldn't hear her over the sound of my own rage. I filmed the entire scene, capturing their frantic attempts to cover up their panic and Chris's bloodied face. "You're both going to pay for this!" I spat, my voice shaking with anger. "I've got all the proof I need!" Linda was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "Jake, please, just let me explain," she sobbed, but I had no interest in her lies. "Save it," I snarled. "I'm done with your bullshit. You can explain this to the lawyer." With that, I turned and walked out, leaving them in their sordid little nest. The adrenaline coursing through my veins made my hands shake, but I felt a grim satisfaction. I had the evidence I needed, and they couldn't deny what they had done. I drove home, my mind racing, knowing that the next steps would be difficult, but determined to see them through. The woman I had loved and trusted was gone, replaced by a deceitful stranger, and it was time to start a new chapter, no matter how painful. When I got home, I sat in the living room, my phone clutched tightly in my hand. The images and sounds of Linda and Chris were burned into my mind. I knew I had to confront Linda, and I was ready for whatever excuses or lies she would try to throw at me. It wasn't long before she came home, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Jake, please, we need to talk," she said as soon as she walked through the door. I stood up and faced her, my expression hard. "Oh, we're going to talk, all right," I said, my voice cold. "Why don't you start by explaining what the hell you were doing at that motel with Chris?" Linda looked down, tears streaming down her face. "Jake, I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen. It just got out of control." "Out of control?" I echoed, incredulous. "You think I'm going to buy that crap? You've been lying to me for months. How long has this been going on, Linda? How long have you been sneaking around behind my back?" She hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "A year. A year," I repeated, the weight of her betrayal hitting me like a ton of bricks. "Why, Linda? Why did you do it?" She took a shaky breath. "I was lonely, Jake. You were always working, always busy. Chris was there for me. He listened to me. I know it was wrong, but I needed someone. And you weren't there. Don't you dare blame this on me," I snapped. "I was working to provide for this family, to give you and the girls everything you needed. And this is how you repay me? By sleeping with another man?" Linda broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "I know, Jake. I know I messed up. But please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work it out." I shook my head, my resolve unwavering. "No, Linda. You destroyed our marriage. You broke my trust, and there's no coming back from that." She looked up at me, desperation in her eyes. "What about the girls, Jake? What about Sarah and Lizzie? They need their parents together." "Our girls need stability, Linda," I said firmly. "And right now, you're not capable of providing that. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm going to fight for full custody. They deserve better than this." The look on her face was a mix of shock and defeat. "Jake, please don't do this," she begged. "It's already done," I said, my voice steely. "I've got all the evidence I need, And believe me, the court will see exactly what kind of person you are. Linda's shoulders slumped as she realized the gravity of the situation. Can't we at least try to make this easier for the girls? She asked, her voice trembling. I'm not going to make this easy for you, Linda, I replied. You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it. The confrontation left me feeling drained, but also resolute. I had made my decision, and I was going to follow through. I couldn't let Linda's betrayal define my life or the lives of our daughters. It was time to move forward, to rebuild, and to find a way to heal from the wounds she had inflicted. The road ahead would be tough, but I was determined to fight for my daughters and for the life we deserved. In the days following the confrontation, I was consumed with a mix of rage and a desire for retribution. Linda's betrayal gnawed at me, and I knew that simply filing for divorce and seeking custody wasn't enough. She had shattered our family, and I wanted her to feel the full weight of her actions. That's when I decided to leak the video. I spent hours deliberating over the best way to do it. I knew that simply sharing it online could have severe consequences, not just for Linda and Chris, but also for me and the girls. So I needed to be strategic. I decided to send it to a select group of people who would undoubtedly spread it around. Linda's close friends, some of our mutual friends, and Chris's wife. I created a fake email account and attached the video, writing a brief, anonymous message. Thought you should see the truth about Linda and Chris. They've been having an affair for a year. Here's the proof. With a deep breath, I hit send. There was no turning back now. The fallout was immediate and explosive. Within hours, my phone started blowing up with messages and calls from friends and acquaintances, all shocked and appalled by what they had seen. I ignored most of the calls, not wanting to explain myself over and over. Instead, I focused on the aftermath that was sure to come. Linda found out about the leak later that evening. She stormed into the house, her face a mask of fury. "Jake! What the hell did you do?" she screamed, holding her phone up as if I needed to see the video again. "I did what needed to be done," I replied calmly. "People deserve to know the truth." "You ruined me!" she yelled, tears streaming down her face. "Everyone has seen this. My friends, my family. What about the girls? Did you even think about them?" "I thought about them a lot," I said coldly. "And I realized they deserve to know what kind of person their mother is. You destroyed our family, Linda. This is on you." She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. "How could you do this to me, Jake? I know I made mistakes, but this is cruel." "Cruel?" I snapped. "You think what I did was cruel? You've been lying to me, to our girls for a year? You had sex with another man, and you want to talk about cruelty? Spare me your self-pity, Linda." The next day, the gossip had spread like wildfire. Linda's friends and even some of our neighbors stopped by, either to offer support or to gawk at the scandal. It didn't take long for word to reach Chris's wife, who promptly left him, taking their kids with her. Chris tried calling me several times, but I let his calls go to voicemail. He had nothing to say that I wanted to hear. Work was a refuge for me during this time. I buried myself in my job, using the routine and the demands of the day to distract myself from the chaos at home. My boss was understanding, giving me some leeway while I navigated the mess of my personal life. At home, the tension was unbearable. Linda alternated between bouts of anger and sorrow, trying to manipulate me with her tears one moment and accusing me of ruining her life the next. The girls, sensing the upheaval, kept their distance, confused and hurt by the sudden change in our family dynamic. I did my best to shield them from the worst of it, but I knew they were suffering too. One evening, Sarah came to me, her eyes wide with confusion. "Dad, why is everyone talking about Mom in that video? What's going on?" I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "Sweetheart, sometimes adults make bad choices. Your mom made a mistake, and people found out about it. It's going to be tough for a while, but we're going to get through this together, okay?" She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "Are you and Mom going to get divorced?" "Yes, Sarah, we are," I said softly. "But that doesn't change how much we love you and Lizzie. We're still a family, and we're going to be okay." The days turned into weeks, and slowly, the initial shock of the video leak began to wear off. Linda, now fully aware of the consequences of her actions, started to show signs of remorse. But it was too late. The damage was done, and there was no going back. I continued with the divorce proceedings, determined to create a new life for myself and my daughters, free from the deceit and betrayal that had tainted our home. As the divorce proceedings moved forward, Linda's initial rage and desperation gave way to a defeated resignation. She knew the damage was irreparable, and there was no point in fighting the inevitable. One evening, she approached me for what would be our final serious conversation as a married couple. "Jake, can we talk?" she asked softly, standing in the doorway of the living room. I nodded, gesturing for her to sit down. I had been expecting this, and though I was braced for another confrontation, I hoped we could have a civil discussion for the sake of our daughters. "Jake, I want to apologize for everything," she began, her voice trembling. "I know I've hurt you deeply, and I've destroyed our family. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know that I'm truly sorry." Her words, though sincere, did little to ease the anger and pain still burning inside me. "Linda, your apology doesn't change what you did. You betrayed me, and you betrayed our girls. But for their sake, I'm willing to move forward and do what's best for them." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I understand. I want to do what's best for them too. I don't want to fight you on custody. They need stability, and I know I can't provide that right now." Her admission surprised me, but I was grateful. "Thank you for understanding. I want them to have a stable home, and I believe that's with me. But they need you too, Linda. We can work out a custody arrangement that allows them to spend time with both of us." We discussed the details calmly, agreeing that the girls would primarily live with me, but would spend every other weekend with Linda. We also agreed on a visitation schedule for holidays and special occasions. It was a relief to finally have a plan in place, something concrete to move forward with. The next day, I met with my lawyer, Mr. Davis, to finalize the paperwork. We had built a strong case for full custody, thanks to the evidence of Linda's affair and her unstable behavior following the video leak. Mr. Davis assured me that the judge would likely rule in my favor, given the circumstances. As we went through the documents, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. This was the end of a chapter in my life, one that had been filled with love, dreams, and now betrayal. But it was also the beginning of a new chapter, one where I could rebuild and find happiness again. The court hearing was scheduled for the following week. Linda and I arrived separately, both of us looking worn and tired. The judge listened to our arguments, reviewed the evidence, and ultimately ruled in my favor. I was granted full custody of Sarah and Lizzie, with Linda having visitation rights as we had agreed. Outside the courtroom, Linda approached me, her eyes red from crying. "Thank you, Jake," she said quietly. "Thank you for letting me still be a part of their lives." I nodded, the anger I had felt for so long beginning to fade. "They're our daughters, Linda. They need both of us, even if we're not together." We parted ways, the weight of our shared history heavy on our shoulders. It was a bittersweet moment, but I knew it was the right decision for all of us. In the days that followed, I focused on creating a new normal for Sarah, Lizzie, and myself. We settled into a routine, finding comfort in the familiar while also embracing the changes. The girls adjusted better than I had expected, their resilience a testament to their strength. Linda's visits were initially tense, but over time, they became more amicable. She was making an effort to rebuild her relationship with the girls, and I respected her for that. We kept our interactions civil, putting our daughters' well-being above our personal grievances. One evening, after dropping the girls off at Linda's for the weekend, I sat alone in the quiet house, reflecting on everything that had happened. The pain of Linda's betrayal was still there, but it was no longer a raw wound. It had become a scar, a reminder of what I had endured and survived. I realized that despite everything, I had emerged stronger. I had fought for my daughters, for our future, and I had won. Now it was time to look ahead, to focus on healing and rebuilding, not just for me, but for Sarah and Lizzie. The journey had been long and painful, but it was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, but I was ready to face them, knowing that we would get through it together. Life after the divorce was a mixture of challenges and new beginnings. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of freedom and control over my life. Sarah and Lizzie were my main focus, and ensuring they felt loved and secure in our new family dynamic became my top priority. We settled into a comfortable routine. Mornings were busy but manageable, with breakfast together and a quick walk to the bus stop. Evenings were filled with homework, dinner, and movie nights. I made an effort to be present, to listen, and to make sure they knew they could talk to me about anything. Linda's visits went smoothly. She was making an effort to repair her relationship with the girls, and though things between us would never be the same, we maintained a civil co-parenting arrangement. It wasn't always easy, but we managed to put the past behind us for the sake of our daughters. I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the steady rhythm of my job. It was a welcome distraction, a way to keep my mind occupied and focused. But outside of work, I found myself exploring new hobbies and rediscovering old passions. Photography, which I had once loved, became a way for me to capture moments and express my emotions. Hiking provided an escape into nature, a way to clear my mind and find peace. One evening, as I was sorting through some old photos, I came across a picture of Linda and me from our early days together. We were so young and full of hope. I stared at it for a long time, feeling a mix of sadness and acceptance. That part of my life was over, but it had shaped me into who I was today. I couldn't erase it, nor did I want to. It was a part of my story, and it had led me to this moment of clarity and renewal. My social life slowly started to improve. Friends who had distanced themselves during the scandal began reaching out again. We started having regular get-togethers, and it felt good to reconnect with people who cared about me. Through these interactions, I began to rebuild my confidence and sense of self. It was during one of these gatherings that I met Jenna. She was a friend of a friend, and we hit it off immediately. Jenna was kind, intelligent, and had a way of making me feel comfortable and appreciated. We started seeing each other more often, going for coffee, dinner, and eventually hiking trips. Our relationship developed naturally, without the pressure or complications of the past. One sunny afternoon, Jenna and I took Sarah and Lizzie on a hiking trip. The girls adored her, and seeing them happy and relaxed in her company filled me with a sense of hope. As we reached the summit of the trail, we sat together, enjoying the breathtaking view. It was a moment of tranquility, a stark contrast to the turmoil of the past year. Jenna turned to me, her eyes filled with warmth. "Jake, I know things have been tough, but I see how strong you are. You've built a beautiful life for yourself and your girls. I'm grateful to be a part of it." Her words touched me deeply. "Thank you, Jenna. I couldn't have done it without the support of people like you." She smiled and took my hand. "We're a team now. We'll face whatever comes next together." As I looked out over the vast landscape, I felt a sense of peace and contentment. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I was no longer afraid. I had my daughters, my friends, and Jenna by my side. We had built a new life from the ashes of the old one, and it was filled with love, hope, and endless possibilities. In the months that followed, Jenna and I grew closer. She became a constant presence in our lives, offering support and love in ways I hadn't realized I needed. She was patient and understanding, never pushing, but always there when I needed her. The girls adored her, and seeing them happy made me feel like I was finally doing something right. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Jenna turned to me with a serious expression. "Jake, have you thought about the future? About us?" I nodded, squeezing her hand. "I have. I want you to be a part of it, Jenna. I want us to build a life together." Her eyes filled with tears, and she smiled. "I want that too, Jake. More than anything." We decided to take things slowly, for the sake of the girls and ourselves. We wanted to make sure we were making the right choices, not just for us, but for our future as a family. Over time, Jenna moved in with us, and the house that had once been filled with tension and sadness was now a place of love and laughter. Sarah and Lizzie adapted well to the new dynamic. They saw how happy Jenna made me, and they embraced her as part of our family. The four of us created new traditions, like Sunday pancake breakfasts and game nights, that strengthened our bond and brought us closer together. Looking back on everything, I realized that Linda's betrayal, as painful as it was, had ultimately led me to a better place. It forced me to reevaluate my life, my priorities, and what truly mattered. I had learned to value myself, to recognize my worth, and to fight for the happiness I deserved. Life was far from perfect, and there were still challenges to face, but I felt ready to take them on. I had a supportive partner, two incredible daughters, and a renewed sense of purpose. The future was bright, and I was excited to see where it would take us. In the end, I discovered that even in the darkest moments, there is always a chance for redemption and growth. It's possible to rebuild from the ruins, to find love and happiness again, and to create a new life that is even better than the one you left behind.